What's good everyone, I'm Zayas, and today I'm here to review Baki-Dou 2018. This is the latest chunk in a long line of martial arts manga by acclaimed author Keisuke Itagaki. The series, whose fanbase consists of a bunch of rabid power-scaling addicts, Itagaki has written classics like Baki, Baki, and Baki. He's written other series too, Dogasen, Shaman, Garuden, but Baki has been easily his most successful work. It's gotten spin-offs, it's gotten side stories, it's gotten anime adaptations, it's got video games, and at this point it's been going on for 30 years with no real signs of stopping. And the influence that Baki has had has also been insane. Series like Tough, Shamo, the Kengan series, Record of Ragnarok, even History's Strongest Discipline Kenichi. Would these series be the same if Baki didn't exist? Even though Fist of the North Star came out first and has had way more influence, Baki has changed the way that people write these one-on-one combat-focused martial arts series. I was thinking of doing these reviews in order, but this Baki just finished not that long ago, so I'll go back for the other ones after. So quick overview on my thoughts on his series so far. So Baki Hanma was my favorite series by far. Then you had the previous Baki-Dou, then this Baki-Dou. I'd say they're both pretty close. Then you have the Grappler Baki, which is a little bit worse. And finally you have New Grappler Baki, which I think was easily the worst part of the Baki series. Getting into this Baki has really good artwork. So I think Baki-Dou before this had the best artwork that the series had seen, but it's evolved even beyond that, and it's gotten even better. Characters are looking massive, thick, and juicy. Sakun shows up looking thick as a horse. He's looking stout and bulbous. Biscuit, his pecs are popping. His delts look swollen. Jack looks way larger than ever. Even Baki shows up looking a little bigger than he used to. Yujiro looks noticeably bigger, thicker. His neck looks super thick and veinier than he ever did. You sometimes may even mistake his fist for a penis, but in a good way. On top of the characters looking a lot more robust, the combat flows as seamlessly as ever. It's always easy to follow, there's some very impressive techniques, there's tons of weight to the blows, and there's some very impressive panels in here. Once again, we see a lot of real-world martial arts in the artwork. There are a few crazy moments in here every once in a while, but apart from a few intentionally silly moments, it is very much rooted in reality, which allows the artwork to flourish. And this is really the core appeal of Baki, just pure violence, watching these monsters, these giant men, just go at it, just pound each other, and it's very primal. There's nothing bad I can say when it comes to the art or the combat in this series. It's literally flawless. Characters, on the other hand, they're not the worst, but they're the weakest it's been in a long time. There's the main cast, which has been around forever. It's a good cast, but we know how strong these guys are. We've seen them fight a ton. We either need them to grow a bunch, or we need some new blood in the series. Sakun fills that role well. He's cool, he represents sumo well, he has honor, dignity, respect for others. He's also somehow a lady killer for some reason. Him and Kahaya are descendants of the creators of sumo, which is great, but just them isn't enough to breathe fresh life into this series. Also, I love Kahaya design-wise and character-wise, but he's just way too weak to be relevant in Baki right now. The other sumo characters introduced were based on real-life sumo wrestlers, but there's nothing unique or special enough about them to make them entertaining or even memorable in any way. When it comes to story, the story of Baki has become a lot more free since back in Baki Hanma, when before Baki kind of had the goal of taking down his dad. Nowadays, people are just basically fighting for no real rhyme or reason. That alone is a small problem, but when you add on the fact that there isn't that many good fights early on in this series, it definitely amplifies it. The first couple fights were somewhat entertaining at least. We had Oliva versus Sakun, which was a great fight, and it happened in the first 10 chapters. We had Baki Sakun, which obviously was a little less serious, but it was still interesting to see. But as soon as you get to that 30ish chapter mark all the way to like 100 chapters, there really isn't any fight worth talking about. I guess you could say Sukun and maybe Hanayama had decent fights versus Sumo, but literally all the MMA fighters and all those sumo fighters were literally just jobbers. Past that, Jack really does save the series later on. He has crazy moment after crazy moment. He shows himself hanging from a tree using his jaw strength. For some reason, he's trying to rip a tire in half with his jaw. Then you have him talking about how he'd show his asshole. It's pure entertainment. He's my favorite Baki character, and it looks like he's going to get a lot more time in the spotlight, which I think is great for the series. Other than Jack Sukun, which was my personal favorite fight of this series, we had a ton of other great fights. Oliver Sukun, the rematch, was a banger. We also had Baki Sukun, but for serious this time. Kahaya had a couple of cool fights towards the end, and at the very end, we finally got teased with the return of Pickle, which will be hype. And I think the series ended pretty strong. The dialogue is a bit muddy too, like the story. There's a couple strong points, but there's also a few negative points. Positively speaking, this dialogue never gets in the way of the combat and explains things simply and effectively. Even outside of combat, characters hype each other up pretty well, making the fights more exciting. How ridiculous this dialogue can get at times can sometimes even be a positive thing. It'll make moments like funny or amusing, like the time when that sumo wrestler talked about having a condom on his back for some reason, or when Oliver just started hitting most musculars mid-fight. Like, it's obviously not very effective, but hey, it's a technique, I guess. The negatives, though, is that sometimes the series gets really defensive over certain techniques. For example, sumo, this entire thing was about sumo, and it felt like Itagaki spent like 30 chapters trying to defend sumo's effectiveness in real life. It's kind of understandable because sumo isn't the most well-respected sport outside of Japan, but it's kind of a bit too much for my liking. Aiki kind of got a similar treatment, but it wasn't as much as sumo, which made it a little less bad, but it was still a little annoying. Baki is obviously not trying to be 100% realistic. That's why techniques like sumo and Aiki are beating out these MMA guys who know BJJ, wrestling, Muay Thai, kickboxing. You know, obviously those techniques are superior in real life, but you don't have to try so hard to justify why sumo has lost so much in real life. You don't have to justify all these different little things about sumo, about people gassing out, about them having bad cardio and stuff like that in this series. It makes it less enjoyable. Oliver is a literal bodybuilder, and he's one of the strongest dudes in the series, and he barely knows how to fight. And I don't really have a problem with this because it's not like Itagaki is bending over backwards to justify why Oliver is so strong. It's not like he goes on rants and tirades about how bodybuilders would be the strongest dudes in the world. It's just that they haven't discovered their true potential or something. I don't even know. These rants about sumo were bad. They really got to me. Yeah, I didn't like it. The only thing left to talk about is this Yujiro rape scene. Now, this isn't the first time that Itagaki has drawn something extremely out of pocket. If you've read like Shounen or Dogen or maybe even like later parts of Baki, you would see things like this. And I don't even think this is like the worst thing he's drawn, but I just really have to ask, like, why was this necessary? First of all, no amount of testosterone will make you gay. You could inject grams and grams of test into your ass and you will still be straight. And going by that same logic, Jack would probably be even gayer than Yujiro because not only does he have Hanma blood, he has his natural test is high, he's also injecting even more on top of that, and he's taking Tren, which will probably make him even gayer. And secondly, there's nothing impressive about raping someone. They frame it as if it's like some sort of feat of strength or something. Like, there's nothing impressive about it. It's ridiculous, and they joke about it very lightly. It's dumb, it's stupid, it's glorified for like no reason. They only brought it up for a few chapters at least, and I really hope they don't bring it up again, which I'm sure they will. At the end of the day, Baki-Dou 2018 still has tons of violence, it still has tons of crazy fights. I just wish that there was something between that gap of maybe even chapter 20 to chapter 100, where there was some more good fights in there. And there are a few other problems with this series, but at the end of the day, it's still Baki. There's still going to be crazy fights, great combat, great artwork. I'm feeling a strong 7. Thank you everyone for watching. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment about anything related to manga. I don't even know what I'm reviewing next. There's still like thousands of options. So if you want me to review something, leave a comment because I'll get to it sooner. I'll see you in the next one.